So up next, our next panel topic is Global Lessons from the World's Largest Tech Accelerator. Please welcome Jim Chung, Associate Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, and Professor Michael Keider from George Washington University. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Chung, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship at George Washington University. My colleague here, Dr. Michael Keider, is the Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at George Washington University and one of the participants in our world's largest tech accelerator, which we'll be talking about today. I'll start out by talking about our program. So we at George Washington University help run a program called the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corps, or iCore for short. We've helped run this in the United States and have been spreading it around the world in different countries, actually 14 different countries around the world, 2 of them in Latin America. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how we've been taking this program, very successful program in the United States, and bringing it to the rest of the world. By doing this program, we've learned some very important lessons that have translated across multiple countries, multiple cultures. The 3 that I'll be discussing primarily today are around culture of innovation, the surrounding innovation ecosystem, and the critical role of mentorship. At GW, we have a very strong history and tradition and programs around entrepreneurship. One thing I want to highlight before we jump into the actual programs is that GW is one of the top 15 universities worldwide for graduating alumni unicorn founders. So we're in the top 15 in the world. That's because GW tends to attract those kinds of students and faculty that are very interested in changing the world, whether that's through politics, law, science, or entrepreneurship. And I think you'll be really impressed by my colleague here, Michael Keider, when he has a chance to talk about what he's been doing in science, technology, and entrepreneurship. Some of our other rankings that we have that I think are worth highlighting is that at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, we've been ranked in the top 25 entrepreneurship programs in the country. I myself have been ranked as one of the top 100 entrepreneurship professors in the world in terms of impact on the startup world. So I'm not an academic myself, I don't do research, but the programs that we run are graduating students and creating startups from our faculty and students that are having a real impact in the startup world. Let me tell you about the iCore program, which, as I said, is the world's largest technology accelerator. What we're doing with this program is we are teaching researchers, meaning students and faculty members who are doing top-notch science and technology research, helping them figure out whether or not what they've developed in the labs and in the classroom have an application in the real world. What we're doing, unlike most technology accelerators, is that we are helping to create more winners. If you think about most technology accelerators and commercial accelerators, what they're doing is they're trying to pick the winners. Right? They're looking at a group of innovators and they're trying to say, this is going to be successful, we're going to pick them and help them move along. What we're trying to do is give our students and our faculty members and other participants in the iCore program the tools they need to shift this curve. This curve meaning what is the frequency of the launch of startups and what are the outcomes, whether they're strikeouts, base hits, or home runs. As you probably all know, most startups are not successful, right? There's a lot of strikeouts. What we're trying to do is shift the curve by giving the innovators the tools they need to figure out, you know what, this isn't ready for prime time yet. I don't think I want to spend the next 5 years of my life working on a startup that's going to fail. I am going to go on and move on to the next big idea that I've got. So we're actually reducing the number of failed startups. We're reducing that risk, and we're also giving those researchers the tools they need to have a roadmap towards commercialization, towards successful startups. So we're increasing the number of base hits and home runs that are coming out of our university labs. What I'd like to do is show a video here that was made by the National Science Foundation and our partners at VentureWell that give a perspective on our program and help explain it from the participants in the program itself, so you have an idea of what it looks like.
iCore is a National Science Foundation program
for people who have an idea or technology
and figuring out if there's a commercial opportunity in it.
It's a bootcamp to learn how to build a startup. iCore is awesome.
The objective of this iCore program is to really increase the economic impact of NSF-funded fundamental research.
It's based on Steve Lang's material in terms of taking off the lean startup philosophy that he had.
iCore is really curriculum focused. They learn how to be entrepreneurs, and it's almost never like what they thought it was going to be like when they joined the program.
The entire course is set up around faculty, taking them through a process of customer development.
The teaching team delivers the curriculum and interacts with the team to get them through the iCore process. All people associated with the program are very experienced in business startups and been through the process themselves.
We engage with the teaching team every week, and we always found their comments to be very useful.
You email them at 1 in the morning, they email you back. Office hours were all throughout the day. If you wanted help at any point, there was always someone you could talk to. They were awesome.
This is an opportunity that not everyone has.
We want to create for this short amount of time what it is to be in a startup, because they may have never experienced it.
The teams that come are made up of 3 individuals.
There is an entrepreneurial lead, a principal investigator, and then there's an industry mentor. They all bring different perspectives to the team process and the process behind the iCore program. They can all expect an experience that's very different than what they've typically done in the past.
The peers have been doing all this research, they know the technology, but the key thing is, do they understand what customer pain that project is going to solve?
They're forced to go out and get 100 customer interviews in a period of 6 weeks.
You're making the people get out of their labs and talk to industry.
So that they can truly understand what the needs are.
With people who are trying to do business think is a lot different than the way that academics think about a particular kind of technology.
I was surprised at how frequently we ended up pivoting. And then every step of the way, we began to realize we were completely wrong.
And often you walk away from a meeting saying, I have never thought about that.
When you start understanding what the problems are, then you start making the connection.
iCore curriculum is an opportunity to learn about customer discovery, how to talk to customers, how to validate their hypothesis, and move forward.
The process itself changes you tremendously. One question iCore is not to sell your technology, it's to learn.
The relationships that you form in this with your teachers and with your team members and with other team members is what will take you forward in the journey after iCore.
Is possibly the most incredible opportunity any of them will ever have, because the only other way to get this experience is by actually doing a startup and taking a risk that you may not ever be as comfortable taking. You simply won't be able to think the same way about entrepreneurship again.
So as you can see, this is a broad national program. You saw a lot of different university names up there. At George Washington University, we run one of the national nodes, regional nodes for the Mid-Atlantic region. There are 9 around the country. The numbers you saw up there in terms of the team numbers were in the hundreds. We're up to around 1,500 or 1,600 teams now at the national level. So this is a large-scale program. I'll talk a little bit more about the structure of it. Let me talk about the methodology itself. So in terms of the methodology, most startups actually fail not because of the technology or because of execution. Most startups fail because they build something that nobody wants. That's what the recent research has shown on why startups fail. You can see up here in this study, the #1 reason was building something that no one wants. So what our program focuses on is making sure that those researchers who believe they have something to contribute to the commercial world actually do have something that somebody does care about. And we do that through helping them understand their customers, guiding them through at least 100 customer development interviews before they start building anything. That's the main goal of what we're doing. To illustrate this, what I'd like to do is show what we used to teach at universities around entrepreneurship and what we teach now, what I call the old school way of teaching entrepreneurship and the new school way. Because in the old school way, we were actually teaching people to do things the wrong way. Old school way, we had the idea that entrepreneurship was something that was faith-based. It was something where the entrepreneur was so smart, they were going out and telling the market what they needed. What we've learned since then is that entrepreneurship needs to be evidence-based, that you're coming up with an idea and you're usually wrong the first time around. But you need to gain evidence, gather evidence to make sure that your ideas have some grounding in reality. So we run experiments around that. So rather than a linear process of coming up with an idea and launching something, we are creating an iterative process where all that's built in. We're not building business plans, we're teaching them how to do business models, doing startups as small organizations searching for a business model instead of something that is considered a 50-page business plan where you're expected to know everything that's going to happen in the next 5 years. We're focusing on customer development instead of product development, meaning don't go out and build a factory and find out that nobody wants the product that you spent $20 million building. Go out there and find the customers and have them pay you to build that product for them. So these are some of the things that we talk about when we're talking about the scientific method of startups. We are teaching scientists and engineers to use their own process of the scientific method in launching their own startups. We have a bunch of tools around this, around both the design and testing of their hypotheses and their theories around why they should be launching startups. The program itself is built around these boot camps, 7-week boot camps, getting to do 100 customer discovery interviews. We have up to 24 teams involved. We have these 3-person teams where it's usually a student, a professor, and an industry mentor. And we have experienced tech entrepreneurs and VC instructors who are trained at least a year before they're allowed to actually lead a class. We're not using professors who are primarily experts in the research around entrepreneurship. We're using actual entrepreneurs. What I'd like to do now is hand over the microphone to my colleague Michael, who's participated in this program 3 times with his technology and his research. What I find really amazing about Michael's story is that we talk about how people are, oh, that's rocket science, or that's brain surgery. You know, it's kind of stuff that, you know, nobody really understands. Michael's research has actually turned into 2 startups that are one in rocket science and one in brain surgery. So Michael, you want to talk about what you do?
Thanks, Jim. I really, thankful to Jim who bring me to idea of trying iCore. Very early, we were actually fortunate enough to be in the 2nd cohort. And as Jim mentioned, I participated 3 times with different technologies from my lab, spinning all the way from aerospace through material to bioengineering. My area of research is plasma engineering. Plasma is the 4th state of matter. And we use plasma to do different things. So I will give you 2 examples. One is micropropulsion, which is a way to control satellite in space. So in the lab, we do basic research with focus on building more efficient microthruster, smaller microthruster, lighter. We also focus on different materials, like self-healing materials. We were fortunate enough to have opportunity for real technology demonstration in space. We participated in 2 launches with our thrusters. And iCore actually helps to reshape the way I was thinking about applying this. And it resulted in licensing most of that technology to new startup, Vector Launch, that building small rockets to launch small satellite. And they will be powered the upper stage with our thrusters. And they recently secured about $70 million in the 2nd round of funding. And the second area of research is related to something different, but using the pretty much same plasma, just made differently. And by the way, the demonstration of that is in George Washington University booth. And the idea is to make plasma cold, which typically is 1,000,000 degrees. But that goes from the basic understanding how this plasma can be made to in vivo trials, treating animals, and the successful demonstration of treating brain tumors with just a single shot of a plasma. And that's where the I-Corps actually helped me to think the way to utilize this technology. Just to give you some anecdotic experience, we were obviously thinking that the plasma should be used for, say, skin cancer as a kind of natural application. But it turns out no dermatologist is interested in that. So the only people who were excited are brain surgeons. And that's how I actually enter in the brain surgery. We were participating in 3 clinical trials where the plasma was used to treat surgical margins. And this, some of the technology was licensed to the company called US Medical Innovation. And that also resulted to over $5 million in research sponsorship. So these are just 2 examples how I-Corps can be used to help and guide any researcher or any professors that focus primarily in the basic study world, but interested in finding some real world application for his technology.
Great. Thank you, Michael, very much. So that's just one professor who's gone through this program at GW. We've actually had probably over almost 100 professors at GW go through this program. Our particular node has trained probably over 5,000 researchers in the Mid-Atlantic region. And we've trained at least, we participated in training over 1,500 researchers at the national level. So you can see the scope and scale of this program. And the types of stuff we are working on is really the cutting edge of what's going on in research in the United States. We're not just making another app. We've got the cure for cancer, and we're exploring space. I was going to play a video on this one, but we're running a little bit low on time, so I'll just kind of skip the video here. But I'll tell you about Ben Holmes, one of our other PhD students who graduated from the program a couple years ago. He's doing 3D printed knee replacements, cartilage replacements. So he's printing them out on a 3D printer and putting into people's knees. Pretty amazing stuff that we're talking about here. As I mentioned, this is the world's largest technology accelerator. There are over 100 universities around the country that have what are called iCore sites, which are small versions of our nodes. And there are 9 around the country that are nodes along with us that have a particular region that they work on. So we're in the Mid-Atlantic region. So there should be a university near you that has some kind of iCore program. As I mentioned, this program has been wildly successful through the National Science Foundation. In fact, it's been so successful that it's now been mandated for all federal agencies that do at least $100 million in research that they must have an iCore type program to ensure that the research they're funding gets out into the real world, that they're not just lab projects, but they're actually having an impact on people. This means that some of these agencies actually already started adopting the iCore program early. These are some of the agencies that have already started. Obviously the NSF. NIH now requires all of its SBIR recipients to do it. Department of Energy has launched several different programs, the Department of Defense. We're starting to now work with the National Security Agency. We're also working with other parts of the NIH. Really, there's, I think, 10 or 11 federal agencies now that are launching iCore programs. Now, this is the fun part. I promise you I'd talk to you about the international stuff. So GW has taken the lead in bringing this program overseas. The National Science Foundation is actually limited in its ability to work with foreign countries. It's a domestic program. They're focused on the United States. We, on the other hand, as GW, have been given the mandate to go ahead, take the material, bring it overseas, and help foreign countries. So we've done 14 countries around the world, including in Brazil and in Mexico. So let me tell you about our Mexico program. I think this was maybe about 5 years ago. We worked with CONACYT, which is the Mexican equivalent of our National Science Foundation, and helped launch their first startup. This was originally an official NSF program as well. It was later NSF withdrew and then came back again. So there's a little bit of a back and forth here with the Mexico program. But the end result of it has been that they've created a program that has been modeled on the NS that's almost identical in terms of the way that it's operated. They have 5 nodes around the country. They run individual sites as well. Their instructors are trained by CONACYT and NSF jointly. They take the same structure in terms of teams. This is the Mexican program. Last time I talked to them, I think they've done 600 teams through their national program. Whether this is going to continue is unsure because of the new Mexican government. We're not quite sure. But up till now, this is the program that they've built and developed. They've had a number of successes. Not quite as high a turnout as what we've had in terms of the United States. This is one of the startups that has come out of their programs. It's a new type of lubricant for engines. We've also worked with FAPESP, which is the Brazilian, actually Sao Paulo agency around science and technology research. They, ironically, have more money in the Sao Paulo region than the federal program. So we were able to work with them because they were able to scale up bigger and faster. This is our first cohort with them. This was a very different type of structure than Mexico. Rather than having a formal NSF program, they were they wanted to just work with GW, no national government involvement. They've taken the program and the training we've given them, and they've actually privatized a lot of it. So these are now a private organization running iCore trainings. Last I talked to them a few weeks ago, they'd done over 300 teams that have gone through the program. They've actually had, I think, a higher success rate than the Mexican program. And this is the website for the private organization that runs the program. And this is one of their startups, Fine Instrument Technology, that's come out of their training program. GW also works with a number of other different countries. Our biggest program is with Korea. We work with their National Research Foundation, the Korea Entrepreneurship Foundation, and the Korea Innovation Center, as well as many individual universities. I'm actually going to be flying out to Korea in just a couple of weeks to run another program over there. These are just some photos that we have of that program as well. They've created a 5-node system. They get all of their training of their instructors from us. They also take the best teams that they've worked with to come to the United States, to GW, and get training from our faculty in how to compete on an international stage. So their best Korean startups are coming to GW and learning how to sell to US customers. These are a number of our other countries. Just finished up a program in the Philippines. We have done programs in India. We're helping them set up their nodes around their Indian Institutes of Technology. We work with Japan. We'll be working with Canada. It's a lot of programs. We are very interested in meeting with new people in different countries to see if there's something that we can do for you as well. The things that we've learned through this program is that you can't just take what we've done in the United States and bring it to another country. You've got to be able to figure out how to take what we do in the United States and fit into the culture of innovation in our foreign country partners. But in addition to this, what should be noted is that our program has been wildly successful in also altering the culture of innovation in foreign countries. In the United States, the impact has been really amazing. When you look at researchers that have gone through this program, they're able to think about their research in ways that they hadn't before. How can my research have an impact on the people that really need it, rather than looking at it as, well, this is an interesting scientific or technical problem that I will publish a paper on and I will present at a conference. We've changed that culture of innovation in the United States. We've changed it in Mexico, Brazil, Korea, India, etc. We can do it in your country as well. Second thing is that we found that mentorship is one of the most critical parts of making sure this program works. Okay? Mentorship has to be built around the local conditions. In the United States, we've been able, we're blessed by a culture of mentorship where we get all our thousands of mentors to come in and volunteer without any kind of compensation. It's pretty amazing. Not all countries have that history of mentorship. And so we work with our partners to figure out what's the best way that that can work. How do we build that mentorship network? We found 3 things that are really important there. Building a community, building some kind of accreditation or some kind of prestige around that program, and then creating opportunities for the mentors within the program. In some cases, you may need to provide some kind of compensation, but it depends on the country. And then finally, there's the local ecosystem. One thing we found in Mexico, for example, was intellectual property infrastructure was not really ready yet for the types of programs that we were doing. They need to accelerate the intellectual property infrastructure and technology transfer, as well as we found regulatory stuff, especially around medical and life sciences technology, is really critical to get right country to country. And that's something that we have to do with our partners. So the bottom line is that at GW, we're very aware of these different types of requirements. We've had so much experience with it. We have the knowledge and the flexibility to work with you. I want to thank you very much for your attention today. Michael and I will be available to hang out and talk to you if you would like, and we'll also be at the GW booth both today and tomorrow. I hope that you can come by, see all the great stuff that we're doing, and then come and learn about some more of our programs and our successes. Thank you very much.